The fall of Elaine Granger. I never thought I'd be the one to bring down Elaine Granger, unyielding president of the Magnolia Glen Homeowners Association. For 3 long years, she ruled our suburban neighborhood like a dictator with a clipboard, a measuring tape, and a set of bylaws that seemed more sacred to her than the Constitution. Elaine was the type of person who cited infractions for flowers planted 2 inches beyond the garden line and fined residents for curtains in unapproved hues of off-white. But even I couldn't have anticipated just how far she'd go or how spectacularly she'd fall. It all began the day my sister, Rachel, and her family moved in with me temporarily while their home was undergoing major renovations after a burst pipe disaster. They were only supposed to be with me for about 6 weeks, maybe 8. My nephew, Liam, was 11 and had cerebral palsy. He used a wheelchair, and while he never once let that define him, it did mean there were certain accommodations he needed. Liam was bright, endlessly curious, and tougher than most adults I knew. The very first evening they arrived, we installed a small, portable aluminum ramp over the 2 front steps leading to my house. It wasn't permanent, didn't require any construction, and certainly wasn't invasive. It allowed Liam the independence to go outside on his own. I saw it as a basic courtesy. Elaine saw it as a declaration of war. At exactly 7:30 the next morning, the doorbell rang. I answered in sweatpants, half asleep, and cradling a cup of coffee. And there she was, Elaine Granger, in all her platinum blonde glory, wearing a perfectly ironed blouse, with sunglasses propped on her head and her ever-present clipboard pressed firmly against her chest. "Good morning," she said, with the tightest smile imaginable, one that didn't touch her eyes. "I noticed an unauthorized modification to your property." I blinked. "What?" "The ramp," she said, pointing a manicured finger at the front door. "It's not on the approved list of front entrance structures." "Elaine," I began, still struggling to process what I was hearing, "it's a temporary ramp. My nephew is disabled. He needs it to get in and out." She didn't budge. Article 9, Section 14 of the HOA bylaws states that all external modifications must be submitted for approval to the Architectural Review Board. You'll need to remove it within 48 hours or face a $50 per day fine. I stared at her. It's a basic accommodation under the Americans with Disabilities Act. She looked down her nose at me. Our bylaws predate the ADA and therefore take precedence. If you have concerns, you're welcome to submit Form 43A with detailed blueprints and 3 contractor quotes. The board meets on the 2nd Tuesday of next month. I want to scream. Instead, I took a deep breath and said, "Elaine, he's here now. He needs to be able to go outside today." "I'm sorry you feel that way," she said, pivoting like a robot and striding down my walkway. By that afternoon, I had printed every ADA statute I could find and left them in her mailbox with a courteous note explaining the temporary nature of the ramp. I assumed naively that, once she saw it was legally protected, the matter would be dropped. I was wrong. When I got home the next evening, a violation notice was duct taped to my front door. A $200 fine for placing unapproved materials in a mailbox not sanctioned by USPS. It was absurd, but that was Elaine's MO: find a bylaw, any bylaw, and wield it like a sword. That weekend, Liam wheeled into the kitchen, his cheeks soaked with tears. "Uncle Chris," he said, trembling, "my ramp's gone. I can't go outside." I ran to the front porch. The ramp had vanished. Not moved, not stored, gone. Through the living room window, I could see a group of neighborhood kids playing street hockey. Liam had been talking about watching them all week. I carried him out myself and set him up in a camping chair so he could at least enjoy the fresh air. Then I stormed down the street to Elaine's fortress of a house-white stucco, matching planters, not a weed in sight. She opened the door, feigning surprise. "Yes." "Where's the ramp?" Her expression didn't flinch. "It was removed per Section 23. Unauthorized structures and HOA remediation rights. You were given notice." "You had no right," I growled. "That ramp was mine. It was medical equipment. It cost over $800. The item in question was disposed of." "That's theft," I said. "It was for a disabled child. You've broken federal law. I'm simply enforcing the rules you agreed to when you moved here, she said, the smugness oozing from her like motor oil. Perhaps next time, you'll respect the integrity of our community. I stepped back and pulled out my phone. Smile for the evidence photo. Her face cracked for a moment. What do you think you're doing? Documenting the person responsible for theft and ADA violations, I said, taking the picture. The authorities will want to know. She laughed bitterly. You can't prove anything. Police don't intervene in HOA issues. I'm not calling the local police. I'm calling someone who actually understands federal law. And that's exactly what I did. I spent the next hour speaking with a lawyer who specialized in disability rights and ADA compliance. When I explained the situation, he nearly burst through the phone. This is textbook, he said. Destruction of assistive medical equipment. Obstruction of access. Federal civil rights violations. This woman is in serious trouble. By Monday morning, things were set in motion. At 9 a.m., Elaine received a certified letter from my attorney detailing the pending civil and criminal complaints. At 9:05, I filed a police report for theft and property destruction. By lunch, 3 other residents had reached out after hearing whispers of what happened. One had a son with autism. Another had mobility issues. A third had installed a filtered ventilation unit for her child's respiratory condition. Elaine had fined them all. That evening, Elaine called an emergency HOA session. Normally, these meetings drew no more than 5 people. This time, the room was packed. Every single homeowner in Magnolia Glen showed up, crammed into the community center, folding chairs, murmuring. Elaine stood at the podium, flushed, waving a stack of papers. A resident is attempting to undermine our governing structure by disregarding established procedures. She scanned the room and locked eyes with me. If we allow one unauthorized ramp, next we'll have trampolines and livestock. I raised my hand. She paused, visibly reluctant, and called on me. I stood slowly. Elaine, I'm here to speak about the theft and destruction of federally protected medical equipment from my home, equipment necessary for my disabled nephew to safely access the house. Gasps rippled through the crowd. That's not true, she snapped. We were well within our remediation authority. I held up my phone. I have video footage showing HOA maintenance removing the ramp at 6:15 a.m. on Saturday morning. The room went silent. Her board members shifted in their seats. I also have a receipt for the ramp, a letter from my nephew's physician, and legal analysis showing that your actions violate multiple federal protections under the ADA and the Fair Housing Act. An older man stood up. Elaine fined me for putting in a handrail after my hip surgery. Said it didn't match community aesthetics. Another voice. She called my son's sensory swing a public nuisance. The dam had broken. One by one, neighbors stood and shared stories of bullying, fines, notices, and discrimination. Elaine tried to bang the gavel, but no one listened. Even her own maintenance guy approached the microphone. For the record, he said, eyes downcast, Elaine told me to toss the ramp at the landfill. Said it was junk. I had no idea it belonged to a disabled kid. If I'd known. Elaine's face was ashen. 2 days later, I was installing a new ramp when a police cruiser rolled up. 2 officers approached her house, spoke briefly, and then escorted her to the vehicle. No cuffs, but clearly not optional. By 4 p.m., the DA's office called me directly. Mr. Langston, the voice said, Elaine Granger has been charged with 3 counts. Theft over $500, destruction of medical equipment, and willful violation of the ADA. Because she acted under the authority of an HOA, there are enhancements. She's looking at up to 3 years. She was offered a plea deal, 6 months of house arrest, restitution, 200 hours of community service with disabled individuals, and a lifetime ban from serving on any HOA board. That evening, as Liam and I tested the new ramp, we saw her return. Her hair a mess, heels missing, her designer coat replaced by a wrinkled government-issued blazer. She looked up, caught my eye, and I saw something I never thought I'd see in her face. Fear. She yanked a for sale sign from the trunk and stabbed it into her lawn. Elaine Granger, Once the queen of arbitrary rules and iron-fisted HOA dominance had finally learned what real law looked like. And she didn't like it one bit. But the rest of us? We slept a little better that night.